Alright guys, I'm back with another chapter in Leviticus. We're in Leviticus chapter 14 where the header reads, Cleansing from Skin Diseases. I'm going to get right into it. And the Lord said to Moses, The following instructions are for those seeking ceremonial purification from a skin disease. Those who have been healed must be brought to the priest, who will examine them at a place outside the camp. If the priest finds that someone has been healed of a serious skin disease, he will perform a purification ceremony using 2 live birds that are ceremonially clean, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. The priest will order that 1 bird be slaughtered over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the live bird, the cedar stick, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop branch, and dip them into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. The priest will then sprinkle the blood of the dead bird 7 times on the person being purified of the skin disease. When the priest has purified the person, he will release the live bird in the open field to fly away. The persons being purified must then wash their clothes, shave off their hair, and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean and may return to the camp. However, they must remain outside their tents for 7 days. On the 7th day they must again shave all their hair from their heads, including the hair of the beard and eyebrows. They must also wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day each person being purified must bring 2 male lambs and a 1-year-old female lamb, all with no defects, along with a grain offering of 6 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil and a cup of olive oil. Then the officiating priest will present that person for purification, along with the offerings, before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take 1 of the male lambs and the olive oil and present them as a guilt offering, lifting them up as a special offering before the Lord. He will then slaughter the male lamb in the sacred area where sin offerings and burnt offerings are slaughtered. As with the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is a most holy offering. The priest will then take some of the blood of the guilt offering and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. Then the priest will pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil in his palm and sprinkle some of it with his fingers 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is on the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest must present the sin offering to purify the person who was cured of the skin disease. After that, the priest will slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person who was healed and the person who will be ceremonially clean. Man, my nose is itching so bad. But anyone who is too poor and cannot afford these offerings may bring 1 male lamb for a guilt offering to be lifted up as a special offering for purification. The person must also bring 2 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil for the grain offering and a cup of olive oil. The offering must also include 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. 1 of the pair must be used for the sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. On the 8th day of the purification ceremony, the person being purified must bring the offerings to the priest in the Lord's presence at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take the lamb for the guilt offering, along with the olive oil, and lift them up as a special offering to the Lord. Then the priest will slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering. He will take some of its blood and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will also pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil in his palm and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is on the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest will offer the 2 turtle doves or the 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. One of them is for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, to be presented along with the grain of offering. To be presented along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. These are the instructions for purification for those who have recovered from a serious skin disease, but who cannot afford to bring the offerings normally required for the ceremony of purification. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you arrive in Canaan, the land I am giving you as your own possession, I may contaminate some of the houses in your land with mildew. The owner of such a house must then go to the priest and say, 'It appears that my house has some kind of mildew.' Before the priest goes in to inspect the house, he must have the house emptied so nothing inside will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. Then the priest will go in and examine the mildew on the walls. If he finds greenish or reddish streaks and the contamination appears to go deeper than the wall surface, the priest will step outside the door and put the house in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must return for another inspection. If he finds that the mildew on the walls of the house has spread, the priest must order that the stones from those areas be removed. The contaminated material will then be taken outside the town to an area designated as ceremonially unclean. Next, the inside walls of the entire house must be scraped thoroughly, and the scrapings dumped in the unclean place outside the town. Other stones will be brought in to replace the ones that were removed, and the walls will be replastered. But if the mildew reappears after all the stones have been replaced and the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest must return and inspect the house again. If he finds that the mildew has spread, the walls are clearly contaminated with a serious mildew, and the house is defiled. It must be torn down, and all its stones, timbers, and plaster must be carried out of town to the place designated as ceremonially unclean. Those who enter the house during the period of quarantine will be ceremonially unclean until evening, and all who sleep or eat in the house must wash their clothing. But if the priest returns for his inspection and finds that the mildew has not reappeared in the house after the fresh plastering, he will pronounce it clean because the mildew is clearly gone. To purify the house, the priest must take 2 birds, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. He will slaughter one of the birds over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the cedar stick, the hyssop branch, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, and dip them into the blood of the slaughtered bird and into the fresh water. Then he will sprinkle the house 7 times. When the priest has purified the house in exactly this way, he will release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. Through this process, the priest will purify the house, and it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with serious skin diseases, including scabby sores and mildew, whether on clothing or in a house, and a swelling of the skin, a rash, or discolored skin. This procedure will determine whether a person or object is ceremonially clean or unclean. These are the instructions regarding skin diseases and mildew. That's the end of chapter 14. It kind of confuses me how an inanimate object could be designated as defiled or unclean. To assume that something like that could take on the properties of similar to what a person could take on as being like unclean, or like think of, I mean, the first thing that I think of is like a gun or a weapon. If that was used to hurt or kill somebody, I don't think anything of the gun or weapon. I just think of the person, and they did something bad. I wouldn't, I wouldn't. I think when, like, again, as a soldier, when you go to war and you take lives with your service issued weapon, they don't like take it out of commission and reservice it or do anything, so it's kind of like, to that extent, I don't understand why they applied such views to something that really, I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of confused as to why they would approach these things the same way that, so they talked about skin disease, but then they talked about having, unless that's a metaphor, cleaning one's house. And so I guess that would kind of make sense, because this is God's temple. We understand that relationship, and we understand that when we continue to sin, the mildew and things like that, and it continues to fester, we know upon further inspection, if it continues to sit, it continues to fester, we know that, hey, this is still unclean. This still isn't good. It hasn't been fixed yet. And so I get that, and it makes me think that it almost has to be a metaphor. So I don't know why they would apply it, the same things that we do for people, to objects. That doesn't make sense unless they were trying to make that type of connection. And so I guess that's where I'm going to leave that. Because also you could make the reference to when Jesus was hollering at the Pharisees and the Sadducees, when he said, hey, you guys do all this work to worry about the outside of the cup, but you don't clean the inside of the cup. And isn't that what can defile you? What's on the inside when you look to drink or feed yourself? And that was, that connection with the Word of God and how it goes. You say, you do all this for the outside, but what about preparing the inside for what God has in store for you? And so I think that very much relates to this, and that just completely kind of changes the intention of how we're how we're preparing to be ceremonially clean or unclean, and how to apply certain things in that capacity, which, I mean, is going to lead me down a whole bunch more rabbit holes. But I look forward to it. But on that note, have a good night. God bless. I love you. Jesus loves you. And I'll be back for chapter 15 of Leviticus, where the header reads, bodily discharges. I'm not going to lie, it doesn't sound like a very exciting passage, but, nonetheless, I look forward to learning and reading and all good things. All good things. Have a good night, and God bless, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.